Hello, greens, peace and power, elevation. Peace and power, elevation be to all the beautiful people out there. This your girl Tiffany coming through here live in effect. Tonight's topic, I am going to put my focus on anthropology. Why am I doing this? Because anthropology is the most important subject to us all. Because you're studying the culture of humanity, or you're studying humanity in general. That's the purpose of anthropology. So this should be the most important, if not the top subject of science, anthropology. It should be at the top of the list, but it's very underrated. It's not as popular as all the scientific fields like biology, chemistry, physics, but it should be at the top of the list because this is where humanity comes in. This is when you study humanity culture. You got cultural anthropology, social anthropology, bioanthropology. All that intertwines together to make up what humanity is. And I want to talk about two people, all right, two African American women. Well, one of them is actually an archaeologist and an Egyptologist and a Nubiologist, all right, but she falls in the line of the anthropology field. However, these two women have played their role into studying anthropology, studying culture, especially when it comes to African descended people, to teach and educate our community about the history and tell the story of the things that had taken place in our past and the culture that we have brought into America, right? And the culture that our distant relatives in the ancient time period has contributed into their civilizations. But it's quite amazing that anthropology is not on top of the list. And it happens to be one of my favorite subjects of all. One of my top subjects. So what I'm going to do is, right, I am going to get into it. I'm going to start with Solange Ashby, and then I'm going to talk about Vera Mae Green. All right. So let me get to Solange Ashby, who she is. Excuse me. No, as a matter of fact, I'm going to start with Vera Mae Green. That's who I want to start with first. Okay. So let me pull up a picture of Vera Mae Green. All right, this is Vera Mae Green. This is the picture of her. Now, she didn't live very long. Okay, she passed away in 1982. All right, so let's go to Wiki One. This is a lot of people's favorite go-to website. So, as according to Wiki One or Wikipedia rather, it says Vera Mae Green was born on September 6, 1928, and she died on January 17, 1982. So she was an American anthropologist, an educator, and a scholar who made major contribution in the fields of Carribean Studies, Interethnic Studies, Black family studies, and the study of poverty and the poor. Now, interethnic, right, deals with the cultural differences in the same ethnic group. So, for example, when we talk about cultural differences in the same ethnic group, we talk about like African Americans, right? And Afro-Caribbean people. Okay. They come from the same ethnic background, which is African descendant, but there is a difference in the cultural ideology, the cultural practice. So that's where interethnic studies come in. Okay. Then goes on to talk about the Black family studies and the study of poverty and the poor. She was one of the first African American Caribbeanists and the first to focus on Dutch Caribbean culture. She developed a methodology for the study of African American anthropology that acknowledged the diversity among and within Black families, communities, and cultures. Her other areas of research included the Mezquitos in Mexico and communities in India and Israel, committed to the betterment of the human condition. Green also focused her efforts towards international human rights. Now, it says she was born in Chicago, Illinois, where she lived in poor urban areas and attended the city's public schools. She was an only child and an avid reader. Having developed an interest in anthropology at an early age, as a child, she drew distinction between the portrayal of Native Americans in Hollywood films and the actual Native American peoples and their cultures. Consequently, sometimes her friends avoided sitting next to her when watching films because they thought she might spoil the show. Green's academic pursuits sometimes were delayed because of her lack of finances. However, she maintained an interest in social science. After receiving a scholarship, she went on to study sociology and psychology at William Penn College in Oskaloosa, Iowa. In 1952, she earned a BA in sociology from Roosevelt University, where she studied under anthropologist St. Clair Drake and sociologist and newspapers columnist Horace R. Clayton Jr., the co-authors of the seminal book Black Metropolis, a study of Negro life in a northern city. Drake encouraged Green to seek graduate study in the social science, but her lack of finances eliminated that possibility. Prior to moving to New York City for graduate studies, she held several positions at various social welfare agencies in Chicago. While her work in direct services with some of the city's vulnerable population was rewarded, she found it necessary to continue her studies. She enrolled in Columbia University under the direction of the anthropologists Charles Wagley and Eleanor Padilla. Green studied the relationship among social stress, health, and disease in the East Harlem neighborhood of New York City. While at Columbia University, she also studied under Native American anthropologist Gene Webfish, who was investigated during the McCarthy era amidst controversy. Green supported efforts to help Webfish keep her position at Columbia University. Webfish position was terminated. Standing up for Webfish caused Green acceptance into Columbia University's doctoral program, but she and Webfish became friends. All right. So in 1955, Green earned a Master's of Arts degree in anthropology from Columbia University. In 1969, she earned her PhD from the University of Arizona. In 1980, the number of African Americans with Master's or PhD degrees in anthropology was below 100. Green was one of them. So before I go on any further, so what we see here is that the lady was very inspired to study anthropology because of her social condition and what she witnessed in her environment. So a lot of time when people get into certain fields of study, it's because of what they learn about their environment and their passion and their vision. So in this case, her environment influenced her to study the anthropology to gain understanding of the cultural differences amongst Black people, Native Americans, and other ethnic groups. All right. And right here, where it says PhDs, PhD degrees in anthropology was below 100 because you didn't have a lot of Black people in the field of anthropology. And still today, you don't have as many Black people in anthropology. All right. So it's very rare. However, the numbers are growing because more and more people are studying into cultural aspect, dealing with the cultural aspect of society as far as customs, tradition. So anthropology is growing as a scientific field, a study. However, again, you don't have as many Black people in the STEM programs compared to all the other ethnic groups. But let's go down to where it says career. Applied and social anthropologist Vera Mae Green made significant contribution to Caribbean studies, interethnic studies, Black family studies, and the study of poverty and the poor. So prior to earning her master's in anthropology, Green held various social service positions in her hometown, Chicago. She worked as a group worker, social welfare aide, child welfare worker, and in the city's housing authority as a community tenant relation aide and social worker. After earning a Master of Arts in Anthropology from Columbia University, Green returned to providing direct services to marginalized communities, but this time her focus including international community development. In 1956, she worked in the United Nations in a community of the Mezzios in Mexico. For this, she became a fundamental educator with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, which is UNESCO. While in this role, she also focused on community development in India. Green's personal experience, professional work on poverty and field work in East Harlem with Wagley and Padala made her an ideal researcher for anthropologist Oscar Lewis' study of a poor urban area in Puerto Rico in New York. In 1963, Green served as one of Lewis' research assistants. Her field notes from that project became Lewis' book, La Vida, a Puerto Rican family in the culture of poverty, St. Juan and New York. In 1967, Lewis won the National Book Award in Science, Philosophy, and Religion for La Vida. After her experiences on the project and with encouragement from Lewis, Green entered a doctoral program at the University of Arizona in Tucson, Arizona, where she earned a PhD in anthropology. All right. Okay, so her doctoral field work was carried out on the Caribbean island of Aruba. Her dissertation, Aspect of Interethnic Integration in Aruba, Netherlands, Antilles, was done under the direction of anthropologist Edward H. Spicer, who was also provided a way for Green to enter the university doctorate program. Anthropologist St. Clair Drake described Green's anthropological work in the Netherlands Antilles as groundbreaking. Drake explained that her work marked a turning point for Black students who wished to do research on non-Black groups. Previously, Black students were discouraged by their professors who would very likely to have used the argument that it wouldn't lead anywhere. In some cases, they would have thought that Blacks would not be accepted in the fields by either natives or their colonial overlords. Green chose to research issues surrounding the social structure in the Dutch-controlled island of Aruba. There were very few West Indian anthropologists of color either. Graduate students from the islands prefer fields like economics, political science, history, and the classics. And when Green chose the Dutch Caribbean, it put her into the category of the unusual. She was the first African American Caribbeanist. All right. Then it go on to say a Caribbeanist is a scholar who focuses on the Caribbean region in the Americas. In some academic institutions, Caribbean studies are often part of Latin American studies program. The first African American Caribbeanist and the only African American Caribbeanist during the most of the 1960s. Green was known for her study of family and ethnic relations in the Dutch Antilles and the United States. She served as supervising anthropologist for a research project in Aruba. So in 1974, she published a book, Migrants in Aruba, which is based on her dissertation. Her other postdoctoral publication on the topic involving the Caribbean, including methodological problem involved in the study of Peruvian family, which was present during the second conference on family in the Caribbean in 1973. Racial versus ethnic factors in the Afro-American and Afro-Caribbean migration, which was published in Migration, Change and Development Implication for Ethnic Diversity and Political Conflict in 1975, and Dominica in Political Parties of the Americas, published in 1982. Okay. Then goes further down to say determine to foster the growth and development of a methodology for the study of Afro-American anthropology. Throughout her career, she insists on the acknowledgement of diversity among and within Black families, community, and culture, and proposed methods for studying Black communities. She published several articles during the 1970s, including the confrontation of diversity within the Black community, in which she documents unification and polarizing influences within the community. In the article, Green explained that while in recent years, Blacks have tended to become more unified at one level, there are indications that there are polarizing influences operating at another level. This influence may be felt in the differential use of the term Negro and Black by certain of the more verbal segments of the population. The former is utilized to denote the Uncle Toms or integrationalists, individuals of African descent, while the latter term is used to denote those who have undergone a rebirth in terms of Black pride. The Toms are often derogatory referred to as middle class, and in contrast, there is a glorification of our roots, which by implication means the lower classes and the folk families. Implicit in this new usage is the accompanying idea that all persons of African descent were unaware of their history and sought escape from any form of Negro connection. As a result, the stage is being set for a confrontation of diversity amongst persons of African descent within the United States. And to this day, there's still the confrontation. There is so much division amongst Black people here in the United States alone. Not just based on the whole ADOS and non-ADOS nonsense, but also the classism, the socioeconomics, where you got the middle class Black folks and the lower class Black people and some upper class Black people, which you call the Black elites. It creates the division. And not to mention the middle class Black folks who probably most likely considered to be Uncle Toms. Even some upper class will be considered as Uncle Toms. And the lower class will just be considered as the lowlifer. So there is the division that's taking place. There is the false dichotomy. Because we have this perception that because if you in a certain class, if you like in the middle class or upper class, that you get treated a lot better than somebody that's in a lower class rank than you, and that's not always true. And then there's the identity crisis that still is in effect to this day. the identity crisis of Black people because they're trying to disconnect themselves from the African part of them, the part that gives them. All right, let me go ahead and continue. But in 1978, Green's article, The Black Extended Family, Some Research Suggestion, was published in Extended Family in Black Societies, which was edited by Edith M. Shickham and Dennis A. Freight. The article examined the limitation and contribution of two studies, one conducted by Dmitry B. Shickham, Gloria J. Louis, and Dennis Freight, and a second study conducted by Jack Jr. In her article, Green asserted that while the data present in the studies could have potentially increased the understanding of U.S. Black families in academic and administrative circles, it did not go far enough. She explained that the Shinkum and Jack studies focus primarily on kinship ties, adult adoption, and fictive kin in Black families, but miss the importance of non-kin and non-kin household units. Let's see, what is fictive kin? All right, so fictive kinship is a term used by anthropologists and ethnographers to describe forms of kinship or social ties that are based on neither blood ties nor affinal by marriage, in contrast with the true kinship ties. All right, so basically, in our community, basically what this article was saying, when they talk about finitive kin, that means people that we call our relatives that's not biologically related to us or that's not related to us through marriage. All right. So let's say you grew up in a neighborhood, in a block, and somebody, your next door neighbor was someone you was very close to, you was friends with, and all of a sudden you refer to their mother and their father as your uncle, your auntie, or your grandma, whatever. So because you have a close tie with them, that all goes back to the African custom. That's how it was in the African community in the villages. It was family, close ties. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. At the end of the day, the family is not always based on bloodline. Family, it can be based on people who is not related to you, people who you have great relationship with, who you got great social ties with, and you refer to them as your kin. And we sit there, we'll call each other's brothers or sister, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're biologically brothers and sisters. That just shows that we have a close tie with each other. But going ahead, continue. All right, the Shikin and Jack studies also focus on one type of extended family in the South. And as in other research on Black American families, not enough attention was given to cultural ecology. Mm. Cultural ecology dealing with cultural relationships. So ecology deals with the relationship of the environment, of an organism and their environment. So organisms that have relationship with their environments. So when you bring in culture, it deals with how humans have relationship with their own environments in a cultural sense. That's all it is. Also, ethnolinguistics. So ethnolinguistics deals with cultural relationships and languages. So in this case, the way the Black families define and perceive weakness and strength, and situational factors like cultural overlapping and cultural division amongst families. Okay. So also we're going to go further down. Over the course of her career, she also focused on the diversity of poverty, migrants, and human rights. Okay. And it says, as an educator, her work on poverty, immigration, poor, and disenfranchised people of color, particularly those of African descent, was a mainstay in the classroom. Green taught at various universities, including the University of Iowa in 1969 and the University of Houston from 1969 to 1972. In 1972, she joined the faculty at Rutgers University, where she was appointed graduate advisor and chair of the Department of Anthropology and chair of the undergraduate division of the department at Livingston College. From 1976 to 1982, she was the director of the Latin American Institute at Rutgers, which offered undergraduate and graduate certificate programs. With her extensive network, Green attracted influential scholars, politicians who gave lectures at the institute. All right, and so she also served on the executive council of the American Anthropological Association, and she was one of the founders of the Association of Black Anthropologists. She also served as the association first president, sometimes hosting meetings in her home. She also took on the role of convener to Quaker anthropologists. She was fluent in Spanish, French, Urdu, Tamil, Dutch, German, and Papaminto. I never heard this language, Papaminto. Okay, so Papaminto is Portuguese and Spanish in combination. Okay. I never heard that language before. Um Neither have I heard Urdu. So, okay, Urdu is Arabic. Looks like an Arabic language. So basically, okay, Urdu is an Indo-Iranian language spoke chiefly in South Asia. Okay, so it looks very similar to Arabic. Well, it looks like it's some form of dialect of Arabic. That's interesting. And let's see, what is Tamil? Because I never heard of Tamil. Okay, so Tamil is a Dravidian language natively spoken by the Tamil people of South Asia. Tamil is an official language of the sovereign nation of Sri Lanka and Singapore, the Indian state of Tamil Nadu, and the Union Territory of Puducherry. All right. So she was very fluent in these different languages. The ones that I'm familiar with and some of them that I never heard of. All right, so let's look at religion. So a member of the 57th Street Meeting of Friends, Green was an unprogrammed Quaker who lent her expertise to support the mission of her faith. In 1973, at the request of the Religious Society of Friends, Green conducted a study to find out why Black people were not joining the organization and what the organization could have done to attract Black members. Green revealed her findings at a Friends General Conference meeting in June of 1973 and distribute them in a report titled Blacks and Quakerism, a preliminary report. She found that some did not know about or knew very little about Quakerism. She also found that some of the religion's ideology, like lack of ceremony and understanding of humanity, appealed to Black people, while others, like patience and passivity, did not. Green also contributed to the anthology Black Fire, African American Quaker on Spirituality and Human Rights. All right, so she died in New Brunswick, New Jersey, at Princeton Medical Center in 1982. In 1980, she was celebrated for her service and contribution to the field of anthropology, commitment to people of color, and for her mentorship to young anthropologists by the Association of Black Anthropologists. Jonetta Cole wrote Green's eulogy, which appeared in several publications. So she never married and did not have children of her own. She left her possessions, which includes a notable collection of Caribbean paintings, to be auctioned off, and the proceeds from her possessions to support 2 scholarship programs for Black and Puerto Rican students in need at Rutgers University and William Penn College. She also planned for the proceeds to support the Zora Neale Hurston collection of Southern Black culture at the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. She arranged for her library and papers to be kept at Tuskegee Institute. Lynn Boyles wrote an article, African American Soul Force, Dance, Music, and Vera Mae Green, about Green's passion for dance, particularly the rumba. The article was published in Sage in 1986. In 1996, Bowles dedicated her book, Sister Jamaica, a study of women, work, and household in Kingston, to the memory of Vera Mae Green. All right. So as you can see, these are her publications at the bottom. And these are the references at the bottom of the page. Okay. So you can also find out more information on this website, fgcquaker.org. All right. So unfortunately, I couldn't find any books or any publication that she has written. Again, according to Wikipedia, she had turned over her some of her some of her publications, some of her information over to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. So that's where it can be found, but it's not online. So I looked online. I tried to put in for Google Scholar and all of that, and I could never find it. So that's all I have about her. Okay. Now, real quick, I want to go on to talk about Solange Ashby. So let me show you who is Solange Ashby. This is Solange Ashby, a very beautiful woman, very beautiful sister. So Solange Ashby is an Egyptologist and a Nubiologist and an archaeologist. All right. So her field is really centered around Nubia and Egypt, the ancient history, particularly the women of Egypt and Nubia area. Okay. And she also studied about the language and religion, etc. Okay. So I want to go ahead and present some little background reading materials, her bio. So again, she's a Egyptologist, Nubiologist, and archaeologist whose expertise focuses on language and religion in ancient Egypt. All right, so she studied for a BA in Intercultural Studies at Bard College at Simon's Rock. She graduated with a PhD in Egyptology from the University of Chicago. Her doctoral research took place at the Temple of Philae in Egypt, as well as excavating at the Kushite cemetery of El Karoo in Sudan. Her research examined the inscription, including graffiti made by the Kushite visitors who traveled to Egyptian temples in Lower Nubia. So in January 2021, she is due to take up a position in the Department of Classics and Ancient Studies at Barnard College, New York, as an adjunct professor. She has held fellowships at the Catholic University's Institute of Christian Oriental Research and the American Research Center in Egypt, and has taught at the American University in Washington. And in 2018, Ashby featured in a documentary directed by Taig Grant, which looked at many aspects of ancient Egypt civilization, including its barter-based economic system. In 2020, she featured in the film series Happy, which focused on the role of economic in civilization. So you got the publication called Milk Libation for Nubian Piety at Philae in Near East Archaeology 2019, Dancing for Hathar, Nubian Women in Egyptian Cultic Life in Dutawo, a Journal of Nubian Studies in 2018, Marodi Worship of Isis at Philae in 2011. So, and you can find the reference down here at the bottom, the further reading, external links, etc., etc. All right, so that's her biography. Now, I do have some reading materials here. Okay, so let's go to chapter 3. So chapter 3 consists of the ancient Egyptian medicine. Okay. No. Well, yeah, chapter 3 deals with the history by ancient Egypt, and the website is pressrubis.community. So Rubis Community is the website. History of Applied Science and Technology. All right, Sahel, Africa, and the Central African Ironsmith, Solange Ashby. All right, so it gives the time period of Kush, 2300 BCE, 300 CE, Nook, Nigeria, 1500 BCE, 500 CE, and Azium, Ethiopia, 1st century BCE to 700 CE. All right. All right, so I'm just going to read the first two paragraphs. It says early history contains many examples of technological advances made by African peoples, including engraving, figure 1, writing, which is figure 2 and 3, animal husbandry, and the development of agriculture, ceramic technology, and metallurgy. These and developments in urban planning, architecture, woodworking, and glass bead technology are a noteworthy example of technology that were developed into unique forms on African continent, not to mention the elaboration of music, dance, and hair braiding, which was unknown elsewhere. Okay. So this is the Ethiopian Ge'ez script. This example records the text of Genesis 29:11 through 16. Okay. So it goes on to talk about the writing. So it says two vastly different system of writing and hieroglyphs and was a cuneiform appeared in Egypt and Sumer, respectively, around 3200 BCE. The earliest alphabet developed from hieroglyphs, Proto-Syntactic, which evolved into Phoenician, which is the ancestor of most forms of writing currently in use. Egyptian hieroglyphs were developed to tally and record grain donations to temples and labor funerary offerings that were buried with the earliest king. In the 2nd century BCE, Marodi scholars developed two scripts, a hieroglyphic script that was derived from the Egyptian hieroglyphic repertoire and a cursive based on the demoted, I mean, yeah, demoted script. The Afro's syllabaries are scripts in which a consonant and a vowel are indicated together by one character. And she went on to write, in the case of Marathi script, the vowel is always a, unless otherwise indicated. In Ethiopic, a base consonant is modified into 7 different forms to indicate which vowel follows the consonant. Ge'ez, the Ethiopic script invented in the 4th century, was also alpha-syllabary. Its consonants were based on the old South Arabian script, which was modified to indicate vowels. Okay. The old Nubian script, invented around the 5th century, used the Greek alphabet with the addition of Egyptian Coptic and Marathi letters for sounds that were not present in the Greek language. These are just a few of the numerous scripts invented in Africa. All right, so just to stop right there, but you guys want to check this out for yourself, you can. Solange Ashby. All right. Also, here's the book called Dancing for Hathar, Nubian Women in Egyptian Cultic Life. Okay, so this came out in 2018. And it can be found on escholarship.org. Okay. And the Journal of Nubian Studies. So let me do it like this. In the non-literate and Nomadic Sea group, culture of Low Nubia, ritual and worship were not organized around a sacred text, nor were they carried out in a temple. All right, so rather, many important rites of passage and worship were heavily associated with communal performance of dance and music. In such rituals, the power of music and movement were harnessed to transport the worshiper into an aesthetic encounter with the divine. Worshippers engaged in nocturnal rituals for the goddess Hathar sought this type of aesthetic encounter. It appears that the aesthetic nature of the dancing performed for the goddess and spiritual drunkenness that it induced were valued in the ritual context of celebration for Hathar, goddess of music, dance, love, and fertility. Women were the exceptional performers of the nocturnal dances in the rites. While Egyptian women comprised the majority of the priestesses of Hathar, Nubian women are attested over several millennia as dancers in the celebration of the cult. Earlier, Egyptologists revealed a racism that disparaged the type of dance performed by the Nubian women as wild and described the women as wearing barbarous clothing. Berner thought suggests that only as an exception, though, do Negro girls dance in a way that assimilates Egyptian sophistication. Wow. And then goes on to say, Nubian women appear as Hatharic dancer from the Middle Kingdom, 200 to 1700 BCE, through the Roman period, 30 BCE to 395 CE. Representation of priestesses of Hathor sporadically but repeatedly included Nubian women, dancers, singers, and musicians engaged in religious celebration of the beautiful one, the lady of dance, the goddess Hathar. Tattooed priestesses of Hathar preserved as mummies from the 11th dynasty. All right, so that's Middle Kingdom. Board design, otherwise found only on contemporary C group women of Lower Nubia. Beginning in the New Kingdom, Nubian women appear in Egyptian tomb and temple art that depicts banquet scenes where where those women acted as musician and dancer. In the Ptolemaic period, temple at Madamud, the hieroglyphic text of a hymn to Hathar described the dancing Nubians were accompanying the goddess on her return from Nubia. Right. In her manifestation as Tufnut, the eye array, performing sacred dances for Hathar, Nubian dancer, musician, and aerobics were a recurring theme in representation of Hathar's rites, jubilees, and banquet scenes for millennia. All right, then. So I'm not going to go any further, but basically, it gives an account of how there were celebrations and dances taking place. Now, the term nocturnal basically means someone who's a night owl or somebody who's an all-nighter. So they were doing this at nighttime. They were dancing and all that. So the Nubian women connected with the Egyptian women, they all blend in, dance together, etc. And it was a celebration for the goddess Hathar. Okay. Again, you guys can check this out at escholarship.org. Okay. Ooh, do, 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 do. All right, so this book right here is called The Routledge Companion to Black Women's Cultural Histories. All right, which edited by Janelle Hobson. So now in this book, it goes into cultural history of Black women. Now, part 2, chapter 2 is where Solange Ashby wrote Priestess, Queen, Goddess, the Divine Feminine in the Kingdom of Kush. All right. So again, I'm not gonna I'm just gonna go ahead and skip down a little bit. And I'm gonna read where it says queenship in Kush. Nubia refers to geographic location in the Middle Nile Valley, the area between the first and the fourth cataracts of the Nile, which today comprise southern Egypt and northern Sudan. The people who lived there in antiquity are called Nubian, as are the modern people who still call the area home. In modern times, the Nubian people have been displaced by successive dam building schemes in Egypt and Sudan, which have flooded Nubia. All right, so down here, Kerman Queens. Due to Kermas, with escrio of writing, which we are unable to identify the rulers of Kerma by name. Kings of Kerma were buried in large tumuli, mount barrels surrounded by subsidiary instruments, sacred retainers, and cattle. High status females' burials within the king's burial complex may have belonged to queens. One individual's elite burial goods may be illustrative of the dual role of a Kerman queen, female complement to her royal husband and priestesses. The woman buried in K1503, a subsidiary burial in Royal Tamales KS, which was second royal burial of the Kerma Classic period, was in turn with which rich grave goods, imported objects from Egypt, a fiance scarab seal indicative of economic agency, and items that seem to indicate the royal status of a priestesses. Wearing a civil headdress evocative of the ram's horns of the god Amun, she wore an elaborate costume which included a leather skirt with a silver beaded drawstring. Evidence suggests that the beaded multicolored leather skirt was associated with a selected group of Nubian women who may have served as priestesses. Predating the Kermit example, tattooed females excavated from a C group Nubian cemeteries at Erconipolis in Upper Egypt were buried in similar leather skirts. Even earlier Nubian priestesses queens were buried in the 11th dynasty funerary complex of Mentuhotep II at Deir el Bahari in Egypt. All right, so she goes into the list of outline about the queens in different areas. All right, and this is the different parts of ancient Nubia, by the way. All right. And then goes on, she talk about the god wives of Amun, the Merodic queens, female power in the ancient African world. All right. So right up here, you guys can check this book out for yourself if you guys are interested. Okay. And the last book here is called Calling Out to Isis. All right. So this is the one that she had written in 2020. It started off as a dissertation, her thesis. Then a dissertation is nothing more than a pre-book. So that's all a dissertation. If you write a dissertation, you're writing a pre-book before you write the actual book. All right. And that's something that everybody has to write when they get their PhD. They have to go through the process of writing a dissertation. And then once they get done writing a dissertation, then they can publish it as a actual book. Okay. So this is her dissertation here. I won't really go into it, but here's the table of contents. Now, the actual book itself costs around $90. And it can be purchased on Amazon, all right? So again, that was her dissertation, Calling Out to Isis. Okay. Other than that, that's all I have for tonight. With that being said, I'm done going over the reading materials. So I appreciate those who was coming in, checking out this channel, checking out the video. Thank you for supporting my channel. Thank you for sharing my contents. And with that being said, you guys have a great one. Until next time, I'm going to present more information, and I'm going to come back here and do some more talks about certain topics, current events, etc. So other than that, y'all take it easy. Y'all please be safe. And until next time, peace and power elevation be to all of you. This your girl Tiffany, and I'm logging off. All right.